Now, immediately after the release of the Birthright Citizenship decision from the Supreme Court, the DOJ posted a memorandum for DOJ employees on prosecution of fraudulent birth tourism schemes from Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald. The benefits of the United States citizenship require little explanation. Unlike most countries in the world, the United States extends this extraordinary privilege to almost anyone born within its borders and territories. Regrettably, the American system is exploited each year by thousands of foreigners who travel to the U.S. under false pretenses to give birth and secure citizenship for their child. The criminal laws of the United States already prohibit conduct inherent to many of these so-called birth tourism schemes. For example, many such schemes start with a false visa application, with lies about the purpose or duration of one's travel to the United States in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1546. Some recent examples crystallize these schemes. In 2024, a husband and wife, Michael, just some chink names, Jing Dong, were each sentenced to 41 months imprisonment for operating a birth tourism scheme with a business named USA Happy Baby Inc. that charged Chinese clients tens of thousands of dollars to help them give birth in the U.S. Liu and Dong assisted customers with obtaining fraudulent visas to enter the U.S. and provided customs entry guidance, housing, and transportation in the U.S. As part of the scheme, Liu and Dong coached their customers on how to hide their pregnancies from immigration authorities. And then there's another one here. People who are committing visa violations or committing crimes to get into the country or to facilitate birth tourism. As these examples make clear, birth tourism schemes exploit our immigration system and violate criminal law. The DOJ will investigate and hold accountable those who engage in this unlawful conduct, as well as those who solicit and sell these criminal services to others. I am directing all U.S. attorneys and the criminal division to work with the DHS to prioritize the investigation and prosecution of birth tourism schemes. While many of these cases are prosecuted as visa fraud under 18 U.S.C. Section 1546, is that section or statute? 1546. Prosecutors should consider whether other federal statutes are violated as part of such schemes, including but not limited to wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering and conspiracy to commit money laundering, unlawful use of means of identification, aggravated identity theft, or conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. The Executive Office for U.S. Attorneys will provide U.S. Attorneys' offices additional information to identify these matters and cases. In case view, and will also identify resources to assist with these investigations and prosecutions. The DOJ will zealously protect the sanctity of U.S. citizenship by investigating and prosecuting those who fraudulently exploit our immigration system. Together, we will bring illegal birth tourism to an end and those responsible to justice. Now, obviously, the actual birth tourism thing, the birthright citizenship thing, can only be changed statutorily by Congress. That doesn't mean that there aren't a multitude of things that the executive branch can do to mitigate the extent to which it happens. So now they're going to make this a priority. So what has changed? What has changed is not birthright citizenship. That is staying the same way that it's been for 150 years. But now, all of these means that people were using to game the birthright citizenship phenomenon are being clamped down on. That's what's changed. So it's become more difficult to exploit the birthright citizenship model. Do you see how we're actually moving in the right direction? Clearly, it would be great to have 9 super base Supreme Court justices who just slap it down. Yes, obviously that would be ideal. We don't live in the ideal world, so let's move on. What has actually changed on the ground? What has changed on the ground is it's getting more and more difficult to exploit birthright citizenship, to take advantage of it. There's more than one way to skin this cat. More on that in a moment, but Matt Forney said, retards. It's over. Trump the raped Jew slave is a failure. Birthright citizenship means all hope is lost. Submit your dicks for immediate removal. And then there's the reality. And this guy says, the retard right is now trying to turn their attention over to Secretary Mullen, despite the fact that the rate of deportations have increased under him. The retards will never get over their addiction to losing. So One Big Beautiful Bill, there were 700 daily deportations. Whoops. Under Kristi Noem, there were 1,400. Under Markwayne Mullen, there are 2,400 daily deportations. And that number, look at this trajectory. More money, more hiring, more agents being released into the field. How high can this number get? Well, I guess we're going to find out. Matt Forney says, I'm convinced the retard right lacks object permanence, a skill that infants pick up. Mark Wayne Mullen ended the self-defeating stunts that Kristi Noem and Greg Bavino were obsessed with and has been more efficiently deporting people as a result. They don't notice or care. This is an IQ test. Do you want the thing that looks cool and flashy but is less effective? Or do you want the thing that you don't notice that is more effective? Do you actually care about deportations? Or do you just care about being mad that things aren't being done exactly the way you would have conceived it of in your little pea brain? This guy says Bavino is a dick sucker, end of story. And Bavino hops in the replies and says, the liberals and rhinos are out in force tonight. Must have struck a nerve, which means we're on the right track. Now we'll get a little bit more about this in just a moment. Colin Ross says to check Ko-Fi. Why are these not even showing up here? Okay. So, we've had 2 that have come through that I didn't notice. Apologies. It was working and then just inexplicably decided to not work. $20 from Politically Catholic. He said, I played center defense throughout high school and I used to run cross country to prepare for the incredible amount of distance running that soccer involves. It was a tremendous advantage to still have my breath in the second half. Yeah, there you go. Running cross country to get yourself in the physical condition necessary to actually play soccer. Thank you for the $20, sir. And then Column Rosh. Here, actually, I have one of these. Hold on. I can at least give you this. He says, Mullen's showing how men are better at everything. Feminists are going to cry about the deportation gap next. The deportation gap. Thank you, guys. So, here, let me do this real quick. Please do. It should be working now that I turned it back on again. Let me just double check, make sure that it is still connected. It is still connected. So please do go to tips.kingpilled.com. Support your streamer. Get us at least in the vicinity of the goal, so that we can we can watch the JD Vance interview later on. So we got a kind of a picture that is developing here about what the...
Welcome to the suck, homos!
Thank you, Living Dead. Nevsky can now use the emotes. So... Just reading your guys' comments here. Cole Bavino a dick sucker, and he goes, okay, liberal and rhino, like actual boomer shit. Yeah. Cheeky says, if you have at least middling IQ and have followed the right the last few years, you should know the levels of psyops and traitorous factions that have to be worked around and should just never speak on any breaking slop or politics at all. Let our fucking president and people cook. So true. So true. Quit falling for psyops. So the little bit of a background here on the Bavino story. Forney quote tweeted Bavino and said, you sucked at your job, which is why Trump fired you, and I know you cry yourself to sleep every night because of this. Tyrone Powers says, how much of the situation involving Bavino, Noem, and Lewandowski are you aware of, Matt? It's a whole fucking thing I could go on about. He says, story time. I'll post links in the comments. Before being promoted to Border Patrol Commander at Large, Bavino was responsible for commanding a bunch of raids in Los Angeles and Chicago, which, yeah, good job. But his promotion was more or less DC factionalism at its finest. It was Corey Lewandowski's suggestion to elevate him, where he operated outside of the traditional Border Patrol structure and reported directly to Noem. The title of Commander at Large of Border Patrol was Corey and Noem's way of bypassing Miller and Homan, so they could have their own public-facing character to empower them in the face of all the power plays going on at the time. For those who don't remember who Corey Lewandowski is, he's a massive fucking snake. He was in the middle of the Trump Sessions drama and softly exiled from anything of consequence in Trump world after he bungled firing Sessions. He's been trying to claw as much power as he can since getting booted. He cozied himself up to Noam in 2025 so he could find someone to parasitically climb to the top with. Bovino was elected by Noam on a whim, and he had a spot created just for himself, which already had internal opposition at the time. He effectively removed himself from the Border Patrol power structure entirely and was let free to do whatever he wanted. He didn't actually run Border Patrol like a lot of people think he did. Lewandowski was. From an NBC article that he posted a link in the comment. The exchange also aligned Bovino with the top aide to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and The exchange also aligned Bovino with the top aide to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski. After Minneapolis, Noem and Lewandowski are now taking a back seat to border czar Tom Homan and CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott, who have publicly advocated for a targeted approach. Another quote, Mr. Lyons said he was in charge, and I corrected him saying, I report to Corey Lewandowski, Bovino said in the email. Lewandowski has been an unpaid special government employee since last February. Now, obviously, something coming from NBC, you shouldn't just believe it just because you're reading it or because it maybe kind of aligns with priors. But this here, Bovino, being quoted directly saying he reports to Corey Lewandowski, who was an unpaid special government employee. And it's pretty obvious that there was a power struggle going on between Miller and Homan on one side and Noem and Lewandowski on the other side. These things it's not just sourced to a couple of articles. It seems pretty clear this is something that was happening. From a New York Times article, Mr. Lewandowski helped elevate Gregory Bovino, a mid-level U.S. Border Patrol leader, to a senior position commanding militarized deportation raids across the United States, 3 people familiar with Mr. Lewandowski's actions said. He was among the top officials alongside Ms. Noem involved in the process of approving government contracts, according to interviews and documents reviewed by the Times. He berated ICE leaders when their officers failed to meet daily arrest quotas set by the White House, flashing a quick temper that left officials across the department afraid that any perceived slight could cost them their jobs, according to people familiar with the episodes. Perhaps there were ICE leaders who needed to be berated. I suppose it depends on what the direction of that berating was. That I don't necessarily see as a downside with him. But he says, to give y'all a timeline, Noem and Lewandowski create a position with no power for Bovino within DHS. This position conveniently allows them to ignore Homan, Miller, and enforcement removal operations. Trump is unaware of this entirely until Bovino shows up and someone is shot and dies in the Battle of Minneapolis, escalating the situation further. I'm not going to endorse counter-signaling of Orrin McIntyre. He's a good dude. Trump removes him once the situation is de-escalated and pending legal cases are dropped by Minneapolis and Chicago. Noem is removed from DHS a month after all this happens. Plus, Nancy Mace has been pushing for a formal investigation into his conduct for his time while Noem was already embroiled in problems with DHS, made worse after the news about her husband came to light. TLDR, Bovino was a powerless figurehead, and the snake known as Corey Lewandowski was abusing his role to undermine Trump and Miller's wishes. And then the articles are linked here below. Carradwin says, and Homan is still on the job, and Bovino is just some Twitter poster now. So tell me again how good or necessary Bovino was to the job. Now, I obviously, I don't like having to accept that Bovino is a clown, but he's acting like one. If the entire operation gets more efficient and more effective once you are removed from your position, then I don't really care necessarily how you got into it. That's like, okay, whatever. Yeah, there was power struggles going on and whatever. But then to go on the internet and try to continue playing this role to undermine the president and make people think that things aren't getting better. Now, I don't care how based you looked. I don't care how much maybe in the abstract we might agree that we need to get lots of people removed from the country. Sure, yeah. When you were involved in removing people from the country, it didn't happen as effectively as after you were removed. And now you're mad that it's happening more effectively? You're lying to people that it isn't? No, you gotta go, bro. So, Richie Ardella, is that how you pronounce it? Will Richie Ardella says today's birthright citizenship decision turned on one fatal move. The majority collapsed political jurisdiction into territorial jurisdiction. That's it in a nutshell. Everyone inside the U.S. is subject to our laws. Illegal aliens, tourists, visa overstays, foreign criminals, all of them. That is territorial jurisdiction. But the Citizenship Clause did not say within the jurisdiction. It says subject to the jurisdiction. Equal protection protects persons within the jurisdiction. Citizenship asks who is subject to the jurisdiction. Protection is not membership. The dissents understood that distinction. The Citizenship Clause was about political belonging, allegiance, jurisdiction, and membership in the American people, not mere physical presence. The majority effectively read the two phrases as one. Now then, the three, I was going to say the three lib women, but the three most lib women, we'll say that. Doesn't surprise me at all that they would intentionally conflate these things, but you're not going to tell me that John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett don't understand this distinction. They were not ruling, they were not deciding on this on the basis of some legal rationale. No, both of them are heavily implicated in this personally, given their own choices of buying foreign children. And they were intentionally reading political preferences into it.